Especially now, when the world is facing a global pandemic, I think it is really good to find an adventure in your backyard. To look for something interesting that is lurking just behind your fence. So that's why we decided to do this thing. This is Stockholm, the capital of Sweden. Famous for these two houses and a sunken ship or whatever. And if you want to travel around the city, bike is the best way to do it. But if you're lazy, you have the basic options. There's an urban train, metro, and even a tram. And then there's also this. Are you thinking the same thing that I'm thinking? Why is it so narrow? So there's also a narrow gauge railway in Stockholm, which makes exactly 0 sense. I mean, it can carry less people, you need special trains for it, it's not compatible with the rest of the network, and, well, it seems like it's coming from a bygone era. So I got interested in it. And what I did first...
Wait, let's rewind a bit. This is Roslgansbanan, or the Roslagen Railway, a narrow-gauge train service operating in the greater Stockholm region. And after I moved to Stockholm, I became straight up obsessed with it. Last fall, when everything started going to hell once again and I was stuck at home most of the time, I spent hours carefully researching whatever I could find about the Roslagsbanan. Wait, this was during the pandemic. I didn't look like that. Yeah, that's better. The narrow gauge Roslagen Railway, and I really mean narrow, the track gauge is only 891mm, currently operates on 3 lines in Stockholm. They all start at Stockholm Östra, Stockholm East, and eventually branch into 3 separate lines, terminating in Näsbypark, Österskär, and Kårsta.
Here, in Kårsta.
Yes, thank you, that's what I just said. Oh, and this is just a taste of all the mispronunciations coming up, so brace yourself. And it is this terminus, the one furthest from Stockholm, that really captured my curiosity. Because even though the line 27 of the Roslagsbanan terminates here, when you examine the place on satellite images, the line seemingly continues on. Well, not the actual railway physically, but sort of the scar that it left in the landscape. And if you follow it long enough, you eventually come across another narrow gauge tracks. This time in a village called...
Faringe.
Yes, Faringe. And these tracks actually lead to the central station in Uppsala. So at this point I started falling into a rabbit hole of tiny trains and narrow tracks, abandoned railway services still in operation, more on that later, and I knew that there was one thing I absolutely had to do.
And at that point I said to myself, I will walk this line. I will reconnect the old railway and walk all the way from Kårsta to Faringe.
And because the Swedish Railway Museum maintains an extensive archive of photographs from when the entire railway was operational, I tried to recreate the same shots to compare how this part of Sweden changed during the last century. This is Stockholm Östra, where what's left of the Roslagen Railway terminates today. Our trip didn't start here, because parts of the railway are being upgraded, so me and my wife, who accompanied me on this trip, instead hopped on a bus to Kårsta, which became part of the railway network in 1885. And on that early cold Saturday morning, we started walking towards Faringe.
It's proper Scandinavian fall. It's raining, it's cold, the weather is, well, not great, but I think that the beauty of the nature around makes up for that. We are now close to Rimbo, the first town on our journey. This part of the railway between Kårsta and Rimbo was closed almost 40 years ago in 1981, which makes it the longest operational part of the now abandoned railway. Initially, they wanted to close the railway all the way to Lindholmen, but they decided to keep the line between Lindholmen and Kårsta because the roads around Kårsta were in poor quality and they were not suitable for bus traffic, so they decided to keep the railway until they upgrade roads. But when they upgraded the roads, they still decided to keep the railway because the public opinion swayed. They thought that they actually liked their trains, so they kept it. And now there are actually plans to reopen this line between Kårsta and Rimbo. But it's still just plans, there are no budget allocations and no concrete dates of when this construction should start.
There is a group advocating for the reopening, but the last activity on their website is from 2011, so it's not probably going too well. Rimbo had been an important market city since the Middle Ages. It was a place where trade roads, waterways and eventually a narrow gauge railway crossed, forming an important junction. Rimbo station used to be one of the most important hubs of the Roslagen railway, forming what the Swedes call Stockholm Samhälle, a community that grew rapidly around the railway. And in its heyday, Rimbo was absolutely riddled by crisscrossing tracks going in all directions. Its first railway connection was to Uppsala via Faringe, which opened in 1884, and just 1 year later it was connected to Stockholm via Kårsta. At the very end of the 19th century, in 1898, a new branch to Hallstavik, a small town at the end of the Edeboviken Bay, was opened, although it originally ended just short of the city, in Häverödal, and the railway was only protracted to Hallstavik in 1915, when a paper mill started operating there. But all that seems to be in the past. The Roslagsbanan era lasted less than a century, and today Rimbo is a quiet, sleepy town with almost no mementos of its former days of train glory, apart from the old railway station now occupied by a Chinese restaurant, and the former depot with a turntable, occupied by who knows what. So we left the city, thinking of its past glory, and heading for the next target, a small community called Rånäs. Talking about glory, if you want to support my ego, this channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. And perhaps even sharing this video with your friends. It would really help my ego, this channel. Thank you so much.
The name Roslagen Railway is derived from the name of this whole region, Roslagen. And the name Roslagen itself comes from the local ancient Swedish, I guess, word for rowing, because it was given to, like local warriors who row on boats and invaded Finland or whatever. And because of this name, Roslagen, the Finnish name for Sweden is actually Ruotsi, or something like that, Ruotsi, which comes only from the name of these rowing warriors. Further, the name Roslagen, Ruotsi, ended up as the name Russia. So Russians are named after this Swedish coastal region because, again, settlers from Sweden who came to Finland continued on to Russia and settled there, and that was their name, Roslags, something cross, so it's stuck, and that's why now we call Russia Russia. So that was the former Ekebyholm station, Ekebyholm station.
This was the only stop between Rimbo and Rånäs, but there isn't much to be said about it, only that there is a small chateau nearby, Ekebyholm slot, which now houses a primary and a secondary school. The days are pretty short in autumn, and as we made our way towards Rånäs, darkness quickly beset the countryside. And then it started raining again. Our plan to reconnect both ends of the old Roslagen railway started to shake.
Behind me is the Rånäs railway station, which is now a private house. We arrived to Rånäs an hour and a half ago. We've been sitting on the shore of a lake contemplating if we will continue our journey or if we will return to Stockholm, and since it's still raining, rather raining but drizzling, and it should be actually raining tomorrow, which is pretty bad if I want to film this journey, so we decided to go back to Stockholm and return the next week to finish the journey, to reconnect the old Roslagen railway. So yeah, see you in a week.
The second part is coming. Maybe not in a week, but soon. If you don't want to miss it, I again kindly ask you to press the subscribe button. It will be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching, and see you soon.